What does it mean to be kin for fun? Why is there such anger between kin for fun and the rest of the ultra-human community? Hi, I'm Starling, and I'm here to tell you exactly why the Kinnies you see on TikTok and Tumblr are not what the otherkin community truly is. To start us off, I need to take us back to 2011, the otherkin golden age on Tumblr. In 2011, Tumblr was big. It was one of the social media platforms and was shared by weirdos and mainstream users alike, though we rarely saw each other thanks to how good the tagging system was back then. In those days there were sides of Tumblr just as there are sides of TikTok, and we could all remain separate due to there being no algorithm. This made it a haven for unorthodox subcultures like the otherkin community. Unfortunately, this also meant that the otherkin phenomena exploded. I say unfortunately because eventually we were big enough that someone was bound to stumble across us, and they did. Media outlets began publishing articles on us. People were going public with their identities. Fortunately, it was still considered a weird niche thing, but it got us enough recognition that we gained the attention of the one thing nobody wants in their niche underground subculture: trolls. Trolling on Tumblr around the early 2010s was at an all-time high. Due to there being such a high volume of queer, alternative, and otherwise weird people on the website, it was one of the main targets of 4chan and Reddit trolling. So you can imagine how they reacted when they got hold of the otherkin community. At this point, it was just a couple of obvious trolls, easily avoidable. Fast forward to 2014, and that wasn't the case. This was the golden age of the social justice warrior, and I don't mean the kind of person who talks about social issues on the internet and annoys bigots. I mean the "if you don't reblog this, you're scum, what do you mean citation needed" crowd. The always listen to every minority no matter what they're saying, and if you argue you're a bigot crowd. Thanks to this mindset, not only were trolls spamming tags en masse, the spreading of misinformation through Tumblr is rampant. And this is where things get sticky. Yandere Bitch Club, YBC for short, was the online handle of a couple of teenagers who, let's just say they were in it for the clout. Back at this point of Tumblr, being the most social justice ever was the way to get clout, and getting clout on Tumblr was important for some reason. To get the clout they wanted, YBC decided to spread and enforce the idea that you cannot have kin types outside your race. When people pushed back saying their kin types are not a choice, they claimed that no, kin types are in fact a choice. Let me be clear here. It wasn't people claiming to be that race in this life that they were against. It wasn't people appropriating the culture, or using names from that culture, or doing blackface, or anything like that. It was simply the act of having a kin type who was not of your race, white specifically. Having a kin type that was an animal was fine, of course, because I guess animals have more in common with us than other races of human do. The thing is, people believed it. The people who didn't believe it started to echo the sentiments due to fear of being harassed, and thanks to the lack of accessible information about otherkin on Tumblr, this discourse was many people's first exposure to the community, and they took it to heart. People started to believe that otherkin was something you could choose to be, and the community became diluted with misguided kids not truly understanding the community they were appropriating. Over time, it reached a point where kin type having a different sexuality was wrong. Even the race coding of a character could get you harassed. By the time it came out that YBC were actually a couple of white kids race faking and grooming minors, the damage was already done. The tags went quiet. Those who still held on to their fiction kin identity claimed they were kin to cope. The drama and discourse had all but destroyed a once vibrant community, and that wasn't the end of it. Kin to cope, as they called themselves at the time, inserted themselves into otherkin spaces and began to misuse our terms, despite several terms being coined for them in an attempt to amicably include them in the ultra-human umbrella. From there, inevitably, people began to identify as otherkin for fun. People tried. They really did. I remember seeing older otherkin messaging those who had just joined the community, trying to educate them on what the terms they were using really meant, but they were mostly met with derision and harassment for having weird beliefs. On top of that, there was a whole complicated thing where real otherkin were finding the kin to cope, kin for fun mess that was now being called Tumblrkin, not understanding where their weird feelings of being uncomfortable with doubles is coming from, that is, people who share your kin type. It's normal for some of us to feel that way early on in our awakening because we're not used to being the only versions of ourselves, but because the kin community by that point had been completely co-opted by kin for fun, these kids weren't finding the information they needed, weren't learning what everything meant and how to deal with the memories and unfamiliar emotions. So they did what kids do. They lashed out, attacked what they believed to be the source of their discomfort. The Tumblr otherkin community had gone from a bustling subculture of spiritual diversity to a shell of itself known only for being the crazies who attacked people for killing the same characters as them, or attacked fandom creators for not representing their character correctly. To this day, that is what people remember us for. Definitions of words change and evolve over time. We know this. But when the language of an entire spiritual subculture has been taken and twisted out of recognition to the point where we're all but excluded from the culture we created, it's heartbreaking. I'll be real, I got a little tearful looking back at this stuff because I don't think anyone realized how traumatizing it was to be in the middle of that. Find a community you belong to only for it to be torn apart in the space of a couple of years is nasty. It was messy, and now there's so little left of us that there's an entire generation of people who think it means something completely different to what it actually does, and actively mock and outcast those who the term actually describes. To any kin for fun watching this, we implore you, use terms crafted for you. Instead of otherkin, use otherkith, hoping link, or otherhearted. Look into the history and terminology of the culture you're claiming to be part of. We'll leave some helpful links in the description. Thank you for listening.